Hello everyone, this is Dr. Jones, and I am posting this video to talk about Othello, Acts 1 through 3, and if you are part of my Intro to Lit class, this is for you for the days that we have missed because of weather, and I'm also posting this on my viral Shakespeare YouTube page, and if you're just a person that likes to think about Othello and Iago and various issues surrounding the play, then you might enjoy this too. So let me start off with the Intro to Lit students, covering the things that we missed because of the weather. Again, before we left, the things that I want you to know, the things that we're potentially going to be tested on, the things that might affect your future writing. A definition of drama, the Aristotelian components of tragedy, that is hamartia, the fatal flaw of a character or the fatal action based on a character flaw. Peripeteia, the reversal of fortune. Anagnorisis, the recognition that, oh, maybe I had a part in this catastrophe. And then the catharsis that happens in the audience, the feelings of pity and fear for the highborn characters on stage and the desire not to emulate them. So you feel pity for them. You fear that you're going to get to the same terrible place that they got to. And then you don't repeat the actions once you have left the theater. I also asked you to be able to define what a Moor is as a descendant of the Berber people, the North African races of people in the Morocco area. And because that's, of course, how Othello is frequently categorized by the people on stage. And I expected you to know Freytag's dramatic pyramid. So it starts with exposition, you hit the main conflict, you've got rising action, you've got climax, you've got falling action, and you've got resolution. So these are the things I wanted the Intro to Lit people to know, and we stopped in Act 1, Scene 1. This video is going to focus very strongly on Iago's motivations, his shifting motivations, his psychology, the effects on Othello, whether or not Othello and Desdemona have their own hamartias, issues like that. So we stopped in Act 1, Scene 1 when Iago and Rodrigo, remember, Rodrigo desperately loves Desdemona. Iago has said that he will get Desdemona for Rodrigo, and in the meantime, he's not going to do anything about it. He's just going to use Rodrigo for money and say that he is working on it. They've established that Desdemona has run off to marry Othello, the Moor of Venice, a man of North African descent, so he is darker in complexion than the white Venetians around him. He is older, he is a general, he is a former Muslim, he has converted to Christianity. This is mentioned one time in the play. He is in all ways the outsider around the white Venetians who want to utilize him for his military prowess in battle against the Turkish forces, and yet they say they accept him. Do they really? He still stands out as the other with a capital O, someone who is from the East, someone who is not a Christian, someone who is darker complexion, and all the things that makes him vulnerable to the evil psychological mind games that Iago wants to play. So Act 1, Scene 1 was where Rodrigo and Iago are waking up Desdemona's father, Brabantio, and using very racist language to get him up and to get him out of the house and to go chase Desdemona and stop the wedding with Othello if they can. I mentioned Iago, and as I mentioned these lines, please do follow along in your textbook. I'm on page 1159 if you've got the standard text for the class. If you're looking at it online, the play, I'm in Act 1, Scene 1, about line 110. I mentioned to you about this, we talked about the fact that Iago uses very demeaning animalistic language to depict the relationship between Desdemona and Othello back at line 86. Your heart is burst, you've lost half your soul. Even now, very now, look at the repetition of now to try to get Brabantio to imagine this terrible moment in his head. An old black ram is topping or having sex with your white you, the religious connotations thereof. The virginal, totally moral, totally pure Desdemona being topped by an old black ram. It's very demeaning language, very racist language to animalize them in that way. Arise, arise, awake the snorting citizens with the bell, or else the devil will make a grandsire of you. And here Iago introduces another component. Not only is he potentially appealing to Brabantio's racism, but to his notions of family, family honor, family lineage. I talked to you before about primogeniture, this idea that the family fortunes and honors and all that sort of thing have to pass from the father to the firstborn son. You keep money and power and that sort of thing within the same families. And Iago's appealing to this and saying if you let essentially a black man marry and then have children with your white daughter, your whole family is going to be disgraced with these people who are not of pure blood, to kind of be a Harry Potter quoter in this instance. He brings this back up again at about line 112, where he says, "You'll have your daughter covered with a Barbary horse," Iago says to Brabantio. "You'll have your nephews, your family members, neigh to you. You'll have coursers for cousins. You'll have horses or, beasts for your relatives, and jennets, more horses, for Germans, for, again, family members." So he is really appealing both to Brabantio's racism and to this notion that his family will be dishonored if this interracial marriage is to take place, that the children produced will be in some way subhuman. Is Iago racist? We've already established that one of the drivers seems to be that he lost the job to Michael Cassio, who he considers not qualified for the position. So he's got a wounded ego based on the fact that Cassio was given the lieutenant position and Iago was not. Is that enough to destroy two people, Desdemona and Othello? I don't know. I tend to think not. Is racism a motivator? Can you use all this racist language? Can you use all these racist images as a way to motivate Brabantio and appeal to his racism, Brabantio's, and not be racist yourself? That's a really iffy question. Iago is such a mental manipulator, it is sometimes very, very hard to say, but he is certainly able to pull out that racist language and imagery when he wants to. Flipping over the page, Brabantio is finally roused by all of this. He asks for a tinder and a taper. He asks for fire and a candle. "Call up all my people." This is line 140. "This accident," says Brabantio, "is not unlike my dream. Belief of it oppresses me already." He has already, according to him, dreamt of this interracial marriage against his will, that his daughter would sneak away against his will and would, in fact, marry Othello. That may speak to the racism inside of him, but also the great fear he has for the quote-unquote honor of his family being diminished by this interracial marriage, which he apparently won't accept. Act 1, Scene 2, line 170. Brabantio appeals to other fathers who say, "Don't trust your daughter's minds because they will sneak away and act against the family's wishes." Well, Desdemona acts in accordance with her own wishes. She's made this match with Othello, who is a completely honorable man. It's her father that's got the problem with it. Then he asks Rodrigo and Iago, "Is there not charms," line 172, "by which the property of youth and maidhood may be abused? Have you not read, Rodrigo, of some such thing?" In other words, again, back to Harry Potter, aren't there magic spells? Aren't there some kind of potions, love potions, that could be used to affect some poor innocent girl like Desdemona? Got a couple of problems here. One, it takes away all of Desdemona's autonomy, her agency, her desire to pick a man who is both honorable and she's attracted to. And two, the potential racism of saying the Muslim, someone from the East, someone who's black, they are not like us Western Christians. They are the ones capable of magic and witchcraft and that kind of evil, dark forces. It's a very sort of racist stereotype applied to Othello here. Brabantio brings it up again in Act 1, Scene 2, when he sees Othello. He says, "Damned as thou art," line 63, "thou hast enchanted her." So again, he brings up this racist trope of the Eastern magician. "For I'll refer me to all things of sense. If she in chains of magic were not bound, whether a maid so tender, fair, and happy, so opposite to marriage, that she shunned the wealthy curled darlings of our nation, would ever have to incur a general mock, run from her guardage to the sooty bosom of such a thing as thou, to fear, not to delight." Now, let me break that speech down again because it is important. And if I say it's important, it's possible you'll be tested on it, intro to literature students. Again, he brings up the chains of magic and says, if it wasn't for that, a maiden as fair and tender as she is, so opposite to marriage that she's never actually wanted to get married. Why else would she want to get married if she was not enchanted here like this? She was so opposite to marriage that she shunned the wealthy curled darlings of our nation. In other words, she rejected people of our own nation, i.e. white Christian Venetians. Well, Desdemona just apparently didn't like them and liked Othello instead. It's not about getting back at her nation or getting back at her daddy. She just recognizes Othello for the honorable person that he is. Her father simply cannot accept that, but it's racist that he brings up again and says, why would she reject marriage and marriage to the best white people in Venice and then run off with Othello if she were not, in fact, practiced upon with, as he calls it, foul charms. Jumping forward to Act 1, Scene 3. He brings it up again during the meeting with the Venetian governors who are talking about the war upcoming with the Ottoman Turks at Cyprus. He bursts in with Othello, makes accusations at line 60, page 1166, Act 1, Scene 3, line 60 again. She is abused, stolen from me, and corrupted by spells and medicines bought of mountebanks. For nature so preposterously to err, being not deficient, blind, or layman of sense, sans, or without witchcraft, could not. He brings up another important thematic point here, nature. You may have heard this old racist trope of like marries like goes with like. Christians go with Christians, black people go with black people, white people go with white people, et cetera, et cetera. He says this has to be witchcraft because it is nature for like to be with like. That is another very old racist trope that is disproven by Desdemona's love for Othello, which is very genuine, not based on anything that her father believes. Othello then addresses all the governors, everybody who is gathered with the Duke in Venice to talk about the war. He, at line 75, he refers to them as most potent, grave, and reverend signors. He's doing a very official address. My very noble and approved good masters, that I have taken away this old man's daughter, it is most true. So he confesses right away. True, I have married her. The very head in front of my offending hath this extent no more. Doesn't lie about it. He then says he's rude of speech, and since he's been fighting since he was basically, 7 years old, all he has is the speech of a military man, so he will be very direct, and he will point out what true, quote, line 90, drugs, charms, conjurations, and what mighty magic, for such proceeding am I charged withal, I won his daughter. It wasn't any kind of magic, it was me, and it was my life, which he then details after they call for Desdemona to come there at line 128. Her father, says Othello, oft loved me, oft invited me. Wait a minute. Brabantio hasn't always hated him? No, he used to invite Othello over to talk so that Othello could talk about his life, and Brabantio would enjoy the meetings. Still question me the story of my life from year to year, the battles, sieges, fortunes that I have passed. I ran it through, even from my boyish days to the very moment that he bade me tell it, wherein I spoke of most disastrous chances of moving accidents by flood and field, of hairbreadth scapes in the imminent deadly breach, of being taken by the insolent foe and sold to slavery. So I was, Othello tells all of his adventures, including being sold to slavery by, presumably, the Ottoman Turks, who he'd been fighting against on behalf of the Christians. He even talks about meeting cannibals that each other eat. Line 144, the anthropophagi, the man-eaters, and men whose heads do grow beneath their shoulders. So I met monsters, actual monsters while I'm abroad. This to hear would Desdemona seriously incline. Oh, she would listen. But still the house affairs would draw her thence. And when she came back, she would devour the stories, as it says here, with a greedy ear, at about line 148. Desdemona's into these stories of adventure, into hearing all the suffering that Othello went through as an honorable soldier. While I, observing, took once a pliant hour and found good means to draw from her a prayer of earnest heart, that I would all my pilgrimage dilate. I would tell her everything. I would take the opportunity to do so. She shed tears, it says, at some distressful stroke that my youth suffered. My story being done, line 156 or so, she gave me for my pains a world of sighs. She swore in faith 'twas strange, 'twas passing strange, 'twas pitiful, 'twas wondrous pitiful. She wished she had not heard it, yet she wished that heaven had made her such a man. She thanked me. She loved me for the dangers I had passed, and I loved her that she did pity them. This is the only witchcraft that I have used. Side note, in the 1623 edition of this play, published after Shakespeare's death, there's two editions of this play, one earlier, one in 1623. That version of Othello doesn't say that Desdemona gave for Othello's stories, gave him a world of sighs. Oh, what wonderful stories, so romantic. In the folio version of 1623, that word is not sighs, that word is kisses. I like that one better just because it suggests a much more active, full of agency Desdemona, passionate about the person she wants and what she wants to go after it. So that word can make quite a difference. Desdemona comes in and says, basically, I want to follow my new husband as duty dictates, not my father, as historically dictates, and they agree eventually to let her go off to war with Othello. One final note from this scene, Act 1, Scene 3, very briefly. Line 286, Brabantio says, or to Brabantio, the Duke addresses him directly and points out one of the hypocrisies of Brabantio for judging Othello only by the color of his skin. He says, and noble signor to Brabantio, Desdemona's dad, if virtue no delighted beauty lack, if virtue does not lack beauty, your son-in-law is far more fair or beautiful than black. In other words, you're judging him just by the blackness of his skin. If you look below, you would see the fairness and virtue that is shining out underneath. This is something Brabantio cannot do. Then there's a bit of foreshadowing from Brabantio to Othello. He says, look to her more. He won't even use Othello's name. He says more. He goes to his racial lineage instead. Look to her more if thou hast eyes to see. She has deceived her father and made thee. And Iago's going to play on this later where he goes, well, Othello, he did, Desdemona did run away from her daddy and didn't say anything, so maybe she's cheating on you too. The seed of doubt is already there in a man, Othello, who is very vulnerable to such things because he is the outsider. He is the other. He's the one that has so much riding on his shoulders, living in a place where the people view him as someone who's useful but is essentially a foreigner, an other, an alien, different, which makes him very, very vulnerable. All right, jumping forward. The end of Act 2, Act 1, Scene 3. The end of Act 1, Scene 3. Iago has a very nice soliloquy. I'm going to point to a few of these that speak to motivation, which is something else in drama you got to pay attention to, and character. So, Iago, thus do I ever make my fool my purse? Yeah, I know, I'm taking advantage of Rodrigo because he loves Desdemona and he's such an idiot. Line 372, I hate the Moor. But why? Because he passed you over for a job? Because, I don't know, because you're racist? Why do you hate him so much? It's still not really clear. And it is thought abroad that between or twixt my sheets he has done my office. Well, this is an unexpected little motivation for Iago. He thinks that Othello has slept with his wife Emilia. Everybody thinks it abroad, all over the place, he says. And then he says something even weirder. I know not if it be true, line 375 or so. I know not if it be true, but I, for mere suspicion in that kind, will do as if for surety. I have no proof, but because everybody believes it, I'm going to act on this as if it were absolutely true. Well, that's psychotic or sociopathic. These sort of distinctions are things you could look into. Is he a sociopath? Is he a psychopath? Is he just so into reputation, as he derides later, that he's going to act on pure rumor? He then devises the plan to use Cassio to suggest that Cassio, as he is talking to Desdemona, is in fact flirting with her, that they're cheating, and set Othello into a monumental rage, to which he is very vulnerable as the outsider, as the other with a capital O. Act 2, Scene 1. There's a really strange little exchange between about line 100 and line 160. Act 2, Scene 1. Everybody's arrived at Cyprus. The war is off. The Turks are fled, but they're all at Cyprus. Othello's coming in his boat. Desdemona and Iago have already arrived at Cyprus in theirs. They learn that the war, in fact, will not happen, but they're going to stay at Cyprus anyway. And Desdemona begins to stretch her legs as the powerful wife of the general, and she engages Iago in a little game to praise women. She says, at line 116, what wouldst thou write of me, Iago, if thou should praise me? And he goes into a very long, very sort of jokey exchange about what kind of praises to write about different women. And then finally she says, I just want you to tell me, if there was a perfect woman, what kind of praise would you write about her? What would you say about this perfect woman? And it's worth paying attention to for a minute. Line 145, Iago. She that was ever fair and never proud, so beautiful but not proud, had tongue at will and yet was never loud, said what she believed but wasn't loud about it. The perfect woman's being described here, from a patriarchal standpoint, of course. Never lacked gold and yet went never gay, so she's rich but not gaudy. Fled from her wish and yet said, now I may. She doesn't follow her whims. She that being angered, her revenge being nigh, bade her wrong stay and her displeasure fly, so she's not vengeful. She that in wisdom never was so frail to change the cod's head for the salmon's tail. She's frugal, she's good with money. She that could think and never disclose her mind. She's not overly talkative. See suitors following and not look behind. She was a person, if ever such white person were. And Desdemona goes, the perfect woman? She was a person to do what? And Iago hits her with to suckle fools and chronicle small beer. Excuse me, my computer went dark. What he means by that is no matter how perfect the woman is, no matter how noble, no matter what kind of general she's married to, no matter how beautiful she is, how smart she is still a woman, and her ordained role in this patriarchy is to have babies and suckle these fools and to keep household accounts, chronicle small beer. He just hits her with that. Is one of his motivations misogyny? Does he hate Othello because he hates women and because he hates Desdemona? Other articles have suggested he is, in fact, Iago, in love with Desdemona. Others suggest that he is in love with Othello. It's very unclear, but certainly his comments are deeply steeped in misogyny. Jumping forward, Iago has another nice soliloquy at the end of Act 2, Scene 1, that I must deal with for a second here. That Cassio loves Desdemona, her I do well believe it. That she loves him, 'tis apt and of great credit. The more, howbeit that I endure him not, the more, although I don't like him, is of a constant, loving, noble nature. Is that his hamartia, Othello? That he's constant, loving, and noble? He's also a bit naive. He believes the best in people. He's vulnerable. Are these all his hamartias? Is Desdemona's hamartia that she's powerful, that she goes for what she wants, and that also makes her vulnerable? Now he says, I do love her too, Desdemona, but not out of absolute lust. I don't love her because I lust after her, though peradventure I stand accountant for his greatest sin, but partly led to die at my revenge. So I don't love Desdemona, he says, because I want to possess her. I love her because I can use her. He is the Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs of this time. He is a master manipulator and psychological fiend. For that I do suspect, he says at line 280, the lusty Moor hath leaped into my seat. Again, saying that the Moor, Othello, has slept with Emilia. And later at line 292 or so, he says, I fear Cassio with my nightcap too. And what that means is he thinks Cassio is also sleeping with Emilia and he's going to destroy him too. Are these just clunky motivations? Is this a sign of being a psychopath or being a sociopath? Is everybody sleeping with his wife Emilia? Because they're not. Emilia is a very honorable person, the handmaiden of Desdemona, wife of Iago, Emilia. And yet he is so into that everybody's out to get him. Is he a paranoid schizophrenic? Who is this guy? Jumping forward. Act 2, Scene 3. Iago gets Cassio drunk. Cassio then attacks a man, makes a fool out of himself. Othello steps in and says, you are no longer my lieutenant. Cassio freaks out and brings up another important thematic issue here. Reputation, he says at line 240, Act 2, Scene 3, line 240, page 1187. Reputation, says Cassio after he's been thrown out of his job. Reputation, reputation. Oh, I have lost my reputation. I have lost the immortal part of myself, and what remains is bestial. My reputation, Iago, my reputation. This is a patriarchal, honor-driven society, and for men, reputation is everything. Well, guess what? It is for women, too. It's called chastity. Chastity is the social belief that women are absolutely faithful to their husbands, and nobody doubts it, so you can't doubt the legitimacy of any children that come out of this marriage. Therefore, the family is left honorable, intact, and well-respected by the community. A woman can destroy that with notions of unchastity, no matter how badly or ill-founded they are, and men can destroy it too if they act in ways that are dishonorable against their reputation. That's what's freaking Cassio out. Iago says, basically, oh, reputation, that's stupid. Reputation is an idle and most false imposition, line 245. Oft got without merit, lost without deserving. You've lost no reputation at all unless you repute yourself such a loser. Here's the thing. Iago doesn't believe in anything. He can say to Cassio, reputation, nobody cares. Later, when he's talking to Othello, he will say, oh my gosh, good name, i.e. reputation. Good name, Othello, it's everything. If you steal my purse, you steal garbage. If you steal my good name, you've stolen everything. He's doing this to manipulate them. He wants to keep using Cassio. He's going to say, Cassio, go to Desdemona. Ask her to ask Othello to get your job back, and then I, Iago, can go to Othello and go, oh, why else would she be pleading for Cassio's job back if she didn't really like him? So he's using Cassio. When he says, your reputation is everything, Othello, it's to pour that poison of jealousy into Othello's ear and destroy him in that way. He is a nihilist. You can look that up, Nihilist. He's a nihilist, Iago. He believes in nothing except what he wants. Another nice soliloquy, Act 2, Scene 3, line 305. He says, who says I'm a villain? I just tell people what they're doing. I tell them what they see. I tell them what they want. And he is, of course, a terrible, terrible villain. He says that Desdemona is framed, at line 308, as fruitful as the free elements. So is that her hamartia? That she's fruitful and she's free and she is, willful. She can say what you want, do what you want. She will appeal for Cassio, and I can use that. I can definitely use that. And then for her to win the Moor, were it to renounce his baptism, all seals and symbols of redeemed sin, his soul is so infettered to her love that she may make, unmake, do what she list. There's the mention of Othello's baptism. He's converted from being a Muslim into being a Christian. And basically, he says, Iago says he's so tied to Desdemona's love that he's going to get destroyed by it ultimately because he believes she's cheating falsely, because based on what Iago has said. Is that his hamartia? Later, Othello says, I love not wisely, but too well. I did not love intelligently, I just love too much. Is that his hamartia? Is that what part of which allows Iago to destroy him? Line 324, Iago says, he will pour this pestilence into Othello's ear, that she, Desdemona, repeals him for her body's lust, that she's cheating on him. And by how much she strives to do him good, she shall undo her credit with the Moor. So will I turn her virtue into pitch, into black tar. Skipping forward. Part of Iago's manipulation is visible in Act 3, Scene 3, starting at about line 90. After a conversation between Othello and Desdemona, where Desdemona is saying, please listen to Cassio, please listen to Cassio, you should give him his job back. She then leaves, and Iago does something that's so amazingly manipulative. Just imagine that you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, and someone comes up to you and points at them and goes, that's kind of weird, huh? Oh, what's kind of weird? Oh, nothing. What? No, nothing. It's just odd the way that Jane was talking to Jim over there. Why is it odd? Oh, no reason. That's all it takes. That's all it takes to put that seed of jealousy that's already kind of been planted in Othello's mind and make it spring to life. You see that here. My noble lord, line 94 or so. Act 3, Scene 3, line 94. My noble lord, what dost thou say, Iago? Did Michael Cassio, when you wooed my lady, know of your love? He did, from first to last. Why dost thou ask? Oh, but for a satisfaction of my thought, no further harm. Why have thy thought, Iago? I did not think he had been acquainted with her. Oh, yes, says Othello, and went between us very often. Indeed. Indeed? Says Othello, aye, indeed. Discernest thou aught, anything in that? Is he not honest? Honest, my lord? Honest, aye, honest. Oh, my lord, for aught I know, as far as I know. What dost thou think? Iago, think, my lord? Think, my lord, by heaven, he echoes me, as if there were some monster in his thought, too hideous to be shown. Thou dost mean something. I heard thee say even now thou likest not that when Othello left my wife. What didst thou not like? And that seed is already there. I mentioned Iago changing his tune about name and reputation. That's at line 155. You can check that out on your own. Good name in man and woman, dear my lord, is the immediate jewel of their souls. Who steals my purse steals trash. 'Tis something, 'tis nothing. 'Twas mine, 'tis his, and has been slave to thousands. But he that filches from me my good name robs me of that which not enriches him and makes me poor indeed. He doesn't believe that. It's all part of the manipulation. And then comes the famous line at line 165, Act 3, Scene 3. Beware, my lord, of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster which doth mock the meat it feeds on. Is jealousy also perhaps one of Iago's motivations? That he's jealous of Cassio for the job, that he's jealous of Othello for Desdemona, that he's jealous of Desdemona for Othello, or if I already said that, vice versa, whoever it is he wants. He accuses others. He provokes jealousy in others. Is it, in fact, something that comes out of him? It's possible. So let me go back on that. Is he jealous of Othello for having Desdemona? Is he jealous of Desdemona for having Othello? I think that was what I was trying to say in my clunky way. Othello then, because the seed is planted at line 225, starts invoking things that we've already heard before. I do not think, but Desdemona's honest, says Othello at line 225. Long live she so, says Iago, and long live you to think so. And yet, there's that break. How nature, erring from itself, and there's nature again. He's already got that seed planted of like goes with like. That's the racial stereotype, and she chose me. And Iago jumps on it. Aye, there's the point. As, to be bold with you, not to affect, not to want. Many proposed matches, many proposed wedding matches of her own clime, of her own nation, complexion, her own race, and degree, her own social rank. Whereto we see in all things nature tends. One may smell in such a will most rank foul disproportions. Thought unnatural. He brings up this whole thing of nature to spur that jealousy inside of Othello. Where I'll end today is the end of Act 3, Scene 3, with the symbol of the handkerchief. This is very important, and it's part, if you're an intro lit student, of your midterm, where I ask you what you think this object is a symbol of, and it could be a lot of different things. It pops up when Desdemona comes back and Othello says, I have a pain here, which means I have the horns of a cuckold, a man whose wife is cheating on him. She's not, but he's starting to think that. And she says, let me help you with your head, and pulls out a handkerchief. This handkerchief is white, fairly large, and has red strawberries embroidered on it. So it's basically a big white handkerchief with red strawberries on it. What might that mean? What does red mean? What does white mean? What does the handkerchief symbolize when taken together? Is it foreshadowing? Is it backstory? Is it part of their relationship? Is it their relationship? These are things I want you to think about. Anyway, Othello pushes the napkin down. Emilia, Iago's wife, picks it up and says, oh, Iago has wanted this for a long time. She doesn't know why, but she gives it to him. Well, how is he going to use it? He's going to plant it in Cassio's quarters. Cassio's going to grab it. Iago will then get Othello to see that Cassio has it, and that's going to be, watch the air quotes please, proof that there's cheating going on between Cassio and Desdemona. So does it represent chastity, fidelity, faithfulness, honor? It could mean all kinds of things. Red can be blood. Red can be passion. White can be purity. White can be any number of things. It might also be Othello. Remember that line? Your Othello, if you could look below his skin, Brabantio, he is far more fair, far more beautiful, far more white in the stereotypical sense than he is black, evil, dark in the stereotypical sense. Jumping forward one last time, Iago brings up a really strange, I'll come back to the handkerchief, but Iago brings up a really strange thing in Act 3, Scene 3 about line 410, where he makes up a huge lie about Cassio being asleep with him and throwing his leg over him and saying, oh, sweet Desdemona, and giving him a ton of kisses. It's a weird lie. It's a really weird lie. Was it weird for men to be in the same bed? No, it was part of the warmth and, part of military life. But is it weird that he would make up this lie and push it? Maybe. Does it prove that Iago is gay? It does not. And yet, it's noteworthy. Last thing I'll say about the handkerchief is Othello comes back in knowing in Act 3, Scene 4, he comes back in knowing Desdemona doesn't have it anymore. She has lost it. He knows this. So he's kind of setting her up in talking about the handkerchief and asking her where it is, knowing it's gone, thinking that it's proof that she's cheating on him and dishonoring him. Line 50, Act 3, Scene 4, page 1205, line 50. That handkerchief, says Othello, did an Egyptian to my mother give, an Egyptian from his ancestral background, gave this handkerchief to my mother. She, the Egyptian, was a charmer, a magician, and could almost read the thoughts of people. She told her, my mother, while she kept it, it would make her amiable, it would make her lovely, and subdue my father entirely to her love. But if she lost it, or made a gift of it, my father's eye should hold her loathed, hate her, and his spirit should hunt after new fancies. She, my mother, dying, gave it me, and bid me, when my fate would have me take a wife, to give it to her. I did so, and take heed on it, make it a darling like your precious eye. To lose it or give it away were such hell, such perdition, as nothing else could match. Well, that's a total setup. If you've lost this magical object, this talisman that's got so many magical properties to it, I can not only cheat on you, but I can blame you for it. It's gaslighting. He knows she doesn't have it. He's setting her up to tell lies that he can then blame her for things that she hasn't even done. Desdemona, is it possible? 'Tis true, says Othello, line 65. There's magic in the web of it. Is there? Really? Or is he just using that old trope that's been thrown at him that Muslims, people from the East, people from Africa, etc., they're the ones who are capable of magic and witchcraft and all that stuff? Is he just utilizing that prejudice that's already been thrown against him? 'Tis true, there's magic in the web of it. A Sibyl, a prophet, a female prophet, that had numbered in the world the sun to course 200 compasses. She's 200 years old. In her prophetic fury sowed the work. The worms were hallowed that did breed the silk. The worms were holy that bred the silk for the handkerchief. And the handkerchief, was dyed in mummy. It was dyed in a drug made from mummies, which you get in Egypt, I guess, which the skillful conserved of maidens' hearts. In faith, is it true? Most veritable, therefore look to it well. Then would to God that I had never seen it, says Desdemona. Huh, wherefore? Why? Why do you speak so startlingly and rash? Is it lost? Is it gone? Speak, is it out of the way? Heaven bless us, says Desdemona. Say you? It is not lost, and what if it were? How? I say it is not lost. Fetch it, let me see it. He is totally playing with her because he knows she doesn't have it. She's doing her best after hearing this string of what are very possibly lies, but are certainly gaslighting, setting her up for this. Her honor is intact. She is being set up in a way to prove that it's not, when in fact it is. And Iago is the force behind the whole thing. We will pick up Acts 4 and 5 next time.